Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well respected marketing and advertising guru from Munich, Germany, Mr. Mo Sattar. Mo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashutosh.
Mo is the head of global campaigns and brand and need building at BSH Home Appliances Group. So, Mo, before we talk branding and marketing, tell me about your own journey in brief and what attracted you to the fields of advertising, law, and management consulting.
Um, so I was born and raised in South Africa. I'm South African by birth from Cape Town. My mother she's retired now, an advocate. And I grew up during apartheid in South Africa, which, as you know, was a system based very much on rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So that was easy for me. Growing up, I really wanted to study law and understand how the system worked. And also, I kind of appreciated the work that my mother was doing. My undergraduate degree was in social sciences, but I focused on economics. There as well, I just wanted to understand the ways in which different cultures interacted. South Africa is a melting pot of different cultures. We have Dutch influence, we have English influence, Indian influence, Malaysian, Indonesian, some Irish, and all of these cultures together with their value systems and their slight discrepancies was really interesting to me. So that's what I wanted to do. When I worked in law, though, for a while, I realized that it was absolutely not for me. Most of us forget that in most industries or in most jobs that you have or careers that you pursue, you tend not to constantly be in a fight. Whereas with law, you have a job when people are fighting. And often the personality types like myself who are looking for common ground find it a difficult environment in which to be successful. And then I moved on to doing an MBA, which expanded my horizons somewhat. And none of those elements have a formal training in marketing or advertising. I kind of fell into it. But falling into it was something that I would probably say I've done since I was 6 or 7 years old, because I've always loved film. I mean, still today, I watch between 50 and 100 films a year.
Wow.
And I love the medium, and I love the medium of communication. So through various jobs that I've had in the past, I've always in some way been involved in communication, which is the basis of marketing and advertising.
Well said. Well said. So let's talk about branding and marketing. Let me start by asking you, what is brand and need building?
I mean, I think it's a pretty new term,
Mm-hmm.
and it's related to the consumer purchase or experience journey. So before the advent of digitalization, it was a lot more difficult to figure out exactly how someone would come about information, how they would use that information, and how that information would then be used to make a decision for purchase.
Right.
Now we have all of this information. So generally, we could then categorize in some ways. And right up front, if you're not looking specifically to buy something at a particular time, you need to be aware of the product. You need to be aware of the brand. And that's generally known as brand awareness. As brand awareness is a metric which for your brand is doing well, that then means when someone actually wants to buy your particular product, you are in what's known as the so-called consideration set. So they know you provide services in the area in which they would like to purchase. So at least you're now being considered. As we understand how important that is, vitally important to be in the consideration set, that then answers your question.
It does. It does. Thank you. And what would you say are some of the key elements of putting together a successful branding strategy?
Well, I would have to respond by asking a number of other questions.
Hmm.
Where are you based? What industry are you working in? How
Right.
large is your current media spend? Which campaigns have you currently got going on?
Mm.
Which cultures are you going to influence? There are a number of different
Yes.
elements that need to be
Yes.
answered before I could provide an answer which would be fair.
Mm.
But generally, some of the questions that I have asked are the questions which you would need to ask yourself at the start to
Mm.
understand exactly what your objectives are going to
Mm.
be.
Mm. Fascinating. Fascinating. My next question is that, while you asked, said that you ask a lot of questions, there is also the need to build a strategic vision for a global campaign. What goes into building this vision?
Yeah, again, uh, you need to start with, okay, where are we starting with? Let's take global brands. Let's take a brand like Bosch or a brand like Mercedes Benz or a brand like um, Apple.
Mm.
These are globally well-known brands which have perceptions about the way in which those brands work and what
Mm.
they mean around the world.
Mm.
So if you're part of a major brand like that
Mm.
and you're now saying what goes into making a global campaign, well, we need to start there. What
Mm.
does our brand stand for?
Mm.
How is our brand perceived?
Mm.
What are the elements of the brand which we think can be improved? Perhaps we have an issue with loyalty.
Yeah.
Perhaps we have an issue with trust.
Mm.
Perhaps we're not too exciting. Perhaps certain younger target groups need to see us as being more emotional in the way
Mm.
in which we perceive, or
Mm.
in the way in which we talk about ourselves.
Mm.
All of these elements would then be studied, and we'd say, okay, this is the framework within which we now need to work.
Mm.
These are the elements and objectives which we now need to achieve. And these are the metrics which we're going to measure ourselves against to ensure that we
Mm.
understand whether we've failed or whether we have succeeded.
Mm.
The last point, as a side comment,
Mm.
many people who don't work in marketing and advertising, often that's quite tricky,
Mm.
right? Moving a brand metric like loyalty just by 2 or 3% could
Mm.
have massive implications for your brand.
Mm.
Yeah. So setting up how you're going to track this, which third party independent organizations you're going to contract to ensure that you actually get the information which
Mm.
you could trust, is also a big part of how you then put together a global campaign.
Mm.
How
Mm.
long can a global campaign last?
Yeah.
Well, let's take Bosch. I mean, we have put together a campaign which is known as Like a Bosch. It is, by any metric, the most successful campaign in the history of our organization, across unaided brand awareness, all the way through to consideration, all the way through to other metrics too.
Mm.
But it's a global campaign and it's already been run for 4 years.
Mm.
So that's a platform which has served us well,
Mm.
um, and certainly will not be changing anytime soon.
Well said. But the other aspect of a global campaign is the multiplicity of cultures that the brand addresses across the whole world.
Mm.
How do you address multiple cultures with a brand campaign that may be global?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, and it's one of the fundamental questions. Why is it fundamental? It's fundamental because at its core, the question implies that not all cultures are the same.
Right.
And absolutely, that is the case. Not
Mm.
all cultures are the same. However, there are elements of every single culture around the world which one could argue are universal.
Mm.
Feelings around love,
Yeah.
hate,
Mm.
loyalty, trust,
Mm.
determination, career, all of these elements which form part of modern life have cultural components which are unique and similar to other cultures around the world. So I'd really like to start there.
Yeah.
Secondly, your
Mm.
particular brand, if it's a global brand, like some of the brands that we've mentioned before,
Mm.
are perceived in various ways in various cultures.
Mm.
So The third point, do you then put together the lowest common denominator across all of the cultures
Mm.
and then provide one piece of work which is run in different languages around the world? That is a model which has been used in the past and it has
Right.
great advantages. You have advantages of consistency, for example. However, there's certain disadvantages too, which means that, as I mentioned, you have used the lowest common denominator.
Mm.
Personally, I wouldn't go that route. I'd go the slightly more difficult route. And that is to say, we know that our brand, whichever brand we're talking about,
Mm.
stands for certain things around the world.
Mm.
Take Mercedes Benz. Comfort is a really important component for Mercedes Benz.
Right.
Okay, so
Mm.
we're not going to throw comfort away, but how you express comfort in different cultures around the world
Mm.
is important. So
Correct.
you need to have slight changes and nuances in how you talk about the feeling of comfort, how
Mm.
you show comfort being enjoyed in different cultures around the world. And
Mm.
that would be the same for other elements
Mm.
beyond components like culture.
Mm. Well said. My next question, Mo, is about technology. And
Uh,
technology has dramatically changed the way branding and marketing is being done now. I'm going back 42 years when
okay.
everything was on billboards and full page
Yes.
newspaper ads. And today everything is on a small screen, small
Yeah.
little phone. How is technology changing branding? And what role does digital transformation play in meeting customer expectations?
One of my favorite little idioms or sayings is the more things change, the more they stay the same. So the fundamental principles of the analog approach,
Mm.
which you talked about
Yeah.
42 years ago, of TV, print, and billboards, the elements still need to be the same in a digital environment. You
Mm.
still need to entertain. You still need to find ways in which you can be engaging and relevant, etc. These are all things that anybody who's ever watched any piece of advertising inherently understands.
Correct.
However, I think the interesting components are the differences. So, number one, in the past, things were analog in nature. And by analog, I specifically mean one way.
Mm.
You received a television commercial,
Mm.
you read a print ad, you watched a billboard.
Mm.
And the interaction from the consumer towards the producer of the ad was
Mm.
practically zero
Yeah.
in volume terms.
Mm.
One major and significant change now is that the communication is two-way.
Mm.
That, of course, has implications. Number one, it has implications for individuality. The TV ad, which you saw 42 years ago, was put together to satisfy a particular target group of which you may or may not have been a part of.
Right.
Our target groups in the future and now are practically one to one. So when you open your Facebook page or your Instagram account or even your LinkedIn account, what you are seeing is not what your neighbor is seeing, is
Mm.
not someone else. It is
Yeah.
absolutely tailored for you.
Correct.
Even Netflix, you put on Netflix, what is presented to you is not presented to someone in your own household who
Mm.
has a second account.
True.
That's very important, which means then that the relevance of communication can
Mm.
absolutely go up,
Mm.
which means technically, in a perfect world, that's good for consumers and
Right.
it's also good for marketers because
Right.
marketers are not wasting as much money. The old adage, 50% of my
Yeah.
marketing is wasted. I just don't know what 50%. I mean,
Yes.
that's beginning to change now a lot.
Mm.
The third component is portability. So in the past, you would have information or knowledge in places. If you wanted to receive a television ad, you needed to be in your living room watching television or at your mother's house or your grandmother's house or something like that, or your friend's home.
Mm.
If you were reading a print ad, well, you need to buy the magazine or you needed to be at the
Correct.
print store. I remember when I was a young man, often on the weekends, I would spend time at bookstores and magazine stores. I mean, just the difference in these two places now is significant.
Absolutely.
Portability means that information, access to information, the individuality component, which I talked about earlier,
Mm.
and the fact that everything is available to you everywhere all the time means that engagement and interaction is also moved up and
Mm.
is more significant than at any other time in the past. The
Mm.
fifth component would probably, or was this the fourth? I forget,
Mm.
is movement from text to video.
Mm.
So moving images, video formats have absolutely become more important now than at any other stage. Of course, in the past, there was only one medium, which was TV or maybe videos or going to the cinema.
Mm.
You now have a variety of different ways of receiving and consuming moving images.
Mm.
And moving images itself has become a more important component of the general marketing mix.
Mm.
And then finally, I would say speed. So in the past, I remember when I started working, and I think, if I may say so, you may be 1 or 2 years ahead of me.
Mm.
I did not even have an email address when I started.
Mm.
My first email address was text based. It was something like 1474 at something
Yeah.
dot
Yeah.
co.za.
Mm.
When you received an email, you weren't expected to respond within 24 hours. That's absolutely changed now. If I send an email, I expect a response within 24
Yeah.
hours. If I'm calling customer service, I expect it to be answered immediately. If I make a complaint, I want to be received immediately. So that is another component which should not be underestimated. Even the campaigns that we produce now, speed is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Relevance is also associated with 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 elements such as cultural changes or cultural big moments within society. To be relevant, you need to produce something quickly so that you could tie on to that. So I think those are the elements which
Absolutely great response.
digitalization has manifested.
Mm. Excellent points you've just given me. Thank you. My next question is that you are a supporter of sports in different parts of the
Greatly,
world. How do
greatly.
you see sports influencing brand loyalty and marketing strategies?
Um, yeah, that's a lovely question. Uh, let's start by saying that the type of passion and loyalty and engagement that sports teams or being associated with sport can engender is always going to far outweigh that which comes from the marketing world related to products.
Mhm.
Okay? No one cares about their washing machine in the same way that they care about their football team. And it's a very basic thing that I always love to start off with,
Mm.
because us as marketers, I think often we're able to navel gaze,
Mhm.
and we care about marketing more than the rest of the world cares
Yeah.
about marketing. And it's
Mm.
very important. Sport doesn't have that issue.
Mm.
It's always interesting to me to kind of figure out the reasons, therefore, right? What drives the loyalty to a sports team? Well, you something which you start when you're 3 or 4 or 5 years old. It's a family tradition in many cases. The IPL is going on in India right now, where you're based.
Mm.
This year's IPL will probably be again break all records, which last year's IPL had broken.
Yes. Mm.
The passion and determination that Indians feel for the sport of
Mm.
cricket is
Mm.
unmatched. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm.
And the answers to all of those questions as to why have a variety of different
Mm.
responses associated with them. And you're a person who really appreciates culture. Cultural nuances and influence, of course, have a huge
Yeah.
component of that.
Mm.
Specifically to your question, being associated with a sports team
Mm.
is just another way in which you, as a brand marketer,
Mm.
are able to make your brand relevant and interesting.
Mm.
That's why marketers in the past have bought famous individuals, some of them who are sports
Mm.
um, stars, very popular in India. Virat Kohli's everywhere. The last time I was in
Yeah.
in Mumbai, I
Mm.
mean, I think he was on a mattress uh, sales site. He was on billboards for telecommunication. I think even when Amazon Prime was trying to get in there, they used him as well. Why? Because if you associate yourself with something which is lovely and individuals see as successful,
Mm.
that then rubs off on you as a brand. So at
Correct.
the end of the day, we could talk about this from a number of different angles, but that's the key point. Yeah.
Mm.
Is you're trying to borrow from something else so that you yourself as a brand can be relevant or exciting or interesting.
Mm.
And that's it.
Very well said. So, time for one more question.
Great.
And this is, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball and tell me, where do you see the future of global branding and marketing heading in the next few years, given the incredible amount of uh, technology that's available? You're being able to pinpoint which consumer is looking for what kind of item. As you said very rightly, two people sitting with Netflix will probably get different kinds of movies. What is your perspective on where do you see marketing heading?
Um, Simply more and at a faster rate of the same. So all of the elements that I talked about before is going to be accelerated, plus one other component. Um, we're in 2024. If you speak with futurists or have the opportunity to do some reading in the area of artificial intelligence, what has kind of coalesced is that by 2029, which is just 5 years ago away now,
Mm.
uh, AI or general AI will be more intelligent than the most intelligent
Yeah.
human.
Mm.
And then within months of that, you will have general AI that will be more intelligent than all of humanity combined. Just saying these words out loud seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. But as humans, we are able to understand linear growth really well, but we're unable to understand other forms of
Mm.
growth. And logarithmic growth, definitely not. So
Correct.
a lot happens for a long time, and then suddenly things happen very, very quickly, and we're
Correct.
unable to keep up.
Mm.
We are slap bang in the middle of that right now.
Mm.
Specifically, what does it mean for marketing? Well, the incorporation of AI into marketing is absolutely the key component of optimization as we move ahead.
Mm.
If you have a look at the components and steps of putting together a marketing campaign, at
Mm.
every single component, AI is going to optimize.
Right.
And that will improve and improve and improve. So from the actual strategy to putting together the storyboards,
Mm.
if it's moving images, to understanding what the key messages are, to analyzing your target groups,
Mm.
to even sorting out the cultural nuances, this AI tool is going to help optimize. It's not
Mm.
going to do everything, but in the same way that it's easier to work off a template,
Mm.
there's going to be a start for us at every level, from strategy all the way to execution, which are going to help us optimize.
Mm.
And then related to that, which we talked about earlier, is the tailor-made pieces of assets is going to explode.
Mm.
You, Ashutosh, are going to get significantly more tailor-made pieces of information and advertising
Yeah.
than at any other stage.
Mm.
And finally, which is perhaps something slightly negative, but
Mm.
something that I see too, is that even though information is going to be provided to us, which are going to be more relevant to us and more interesting to us because AI and all of the tools which are now available to us
Mm.
means that we could be more specific, even though that's going to be the case,
Mm.
the rejection of advertising and influencing of one's decisions is certainly going to go up.
Mm.
So how that is going to play out into the future, I have no idea.
Mm. Well said. And on that note, Mo, thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of branding and marketing. I think I picked up very, very interesting comments and thoughts from you on where you see marketing going, on how do you see consumer behavior, the impact of sports and sports persons on branding and marketing. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
It was an absolute pleasure. Congratulations again on all that you have achieved with the brand called You. And I look forward to speaking to you again at some stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.